So I'll ask you first a general question and then maybe a bit more specifically. Do you have emotional ups and downs, or do you go to extremes as you used to? Do you ever get like really angry or really ecstatically happy? Or, or is it more kind of balanced or closer to a flat line, which some people say is the goal? So I'm curious to know what it's like for you.
Certainly, it's not a flat line. I can tell you that. It's far from a flat line. Um, the reason I'm posing is that I want to capture that in such a way so it doesn't also come as a premeditative sort of worked out, because it could easily be said, oh yes, of course I can easily be carried up and down by anything, and at the surface level of this, it may display itself as such. And given the personality traits which remain in all of us, irrespective of the level of consciousness, this would play itself out. And we talked about it before, if you recall, like
In the last call.
in the last, where this have been touched upon, and it's not even that I process this, or it takes time to process it. It's like what meant to play itself out plays itself out. You see? So at a certain level, at the surface level of life, or embodied surface level of experience, there is this fullness of engagement. So in other words, I'm engaged. If I'm engaged, I'm engaged. If I'm angry, I'm fully engaged in that emotion. If I'm upset about something, I'm fully engaged. If I'm reflective on something, I'm fully engaged in that. If I'm contemplative, I'm fully engaged in that. So whatever I'm engaged in, whatever is there, had to experience itself as that wave, a ripple, shimmer, or whatever that may be, right? Full engagement is there. And yet with that full engagement, that part which is that inner core is not at all affected by all of this and knows itself not being affected, ever. But it's not at all at the level of, I'm going to get angry now, and I could witness that, I can see that. So I don't see, like we can just give this scenario, right?
I understand.
None of that. None of that. To begin with, this also, I wouldn't be doing this work in the way I do that if I do not fully understand the futility of having a kind of blanket, or putting blanket over experience, or having it as a blanket experience. Because these energies, these forces, primordial archetypal forces, we could call them forces of creative intelligence, they display themselves in accord with how we are wired and what a certain gamut, certain spectrum meant to be expressed here. Some people are going through life in a very placid way, in such a placid way that they may not even fully know if they're alive or not, and we know that that's not an exaggeration. You speak to these people and they sometimes wonder themselves. Some people say that they've been numb for many, many years, and that they don't even know whether this is good or bad, because that in itself is a sign of numbness.
Mhm.
So I'm not entirely sure even where you going with that question, but I understand that you want to know how it is being experienced. But it's like what is interesting to me now is the where to take this conversation, you see? Because inevitably I would, if I speak about my own unique experience, then it will somehow do an injustice or will be a betrayal of knowing what actually is taking place. You see? So in other words, in this,
I don't actually understand.
well, you're asking an adept, you see? An
Yes,
adept who understands human condition,
yes,
who understands the depth of human emotion, who understands also what the foundational forces at work that ignite this, bring it to the surface. You see?
yeah, yeah.
So there are so many different ways of how one can act that role. There are so many different ways how can one play the same role. There are many different takes of how one can say to be or not to be. It depends. You know, if you are to play this every single evening and go on stage, you may want to have variety to that to be or not to be. You may perfect that and oh, that night it was the best. Do I stick with that line? No, if there is something for me from that on the stage, not just the money, not just the accolades, but I want something more than just that, then I've got to enjoy this to be or not to be to its fullness. So therefore, there are so many ways of how one can enact any particular role. So this is what, in a way, what I'm trying to say to you now, Amir, honestly, is that there is no way for me to answer that question sincerely. You see,
Well, I
it will.
think if, tell me if I understand you correctly. I think what you're saying is that um, that it's because of the special setting of an interview and me seeing me asking you questions and trying to get some information out of your answers. It's difficult for you because really, if I wanted to know what your emotional experience is like, I would have to see you in 250 different situations, and then I would have more of a sense of how you relate to your emotional experience.
No, even then you wouldn't know. You see,
Okay.
even then you would only be subjected to your own interpretation.
Okay.
You will be subjected to, or at least to the surface level of affairs. You see,
Yes.
it is very presumptuous on our part to assume if we see an angry woman in a shop, to assume that she's angry. You see, and like
yeah.
I'm saying that she might be rehearsing a role. She might be in full control of what she's doing. You see, what I'm saying is that this cannot be answered sincerely because there is no sincerity when it comes to this, what you're asking. So therefore, I'm trying to give that not an elusive reply, which is very easy to say, and then we will be like nice and dandy, you know, like, yes, I do get full emotional gamut of experiences. I'm not a walking, self-realized robot-like it's transcendental field. There is a lot of ripples go and subside. No,
Okay.
but
No,
but
I understand. I'm asking you this because I'm at the beginning of my research,
no, I understand too.
and I'm trying to um, basically I I think I have a basic question about my research, which is it possible, let's say in your case, to describe specific experiences with such depth and richness and multidimensionality that a description of an experience, a situation, an interaction would actually encapsulate and deliver the fullness of who you are and your teaching and your understanding. Or, which I think is what you're suggesting, is that it has to be kind of, you can't get from one situation and one experience, you can't really get anything. Do you understand?
I totally hear you.
Yeah.
Maybe this is something worth mentioning as well, is the limitation of all researches when it comes to this. Just as they today speak in quantum physics in the last few years, that the observer observed dynamics now came to a point where physics cannot develop in the same way, as a science it was developing in the last few hundred years.
Right.
Because we came to a point where there is no observer without observed, and therefore there is no such thing as objective observation.
Yes.
So this can be applied to research as well. So it's like doing theses on, let's say, yoga. It will always suffer to the research on something which cannot be researched, because by definition it's the science of self-realization, or at least it's the science where two seemingly separate, disjointed parts are joined together again, yoked together. So therefore, how can that be subject to a independent passive observer based on research? You see, but people do doctorates and PhDs these days. So therefore, of course, but I'm only saying this so that I'm trying to give you as sincere answer as I can in my understanding. That's all.
Yes.
So I don't want to kind of like give staple kind of to secure something here, or help you in your research or secure my reputation. Because what's more interesting for me is that how can this be related in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
But there's something you've asked as you were constructing the question with regard to this.
Mm-hmm.
It almost came out of you, but maybe not fully. Whether are you happy, like this? Do your emotions change? They do. You have this. I admitted that there's a full range of emotional experiences. But where does that, I'm almost kind of like completing that question for you. Where does that leave me, right? So, because I think this is maybe quite interesting, or at least in my perspective, should be interesting.
Okay.
You see?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, like there is certainly some kind of a distinctive even trajectory of intentionality. Otherwise, why would teach, right?
Mm-hmm.
One can, of course, ascribe that or explain that away as well. You need to make a living, or you need to, do something. But to me personally, this will not suffice.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, one of the definitions of higher states of consciousness, let alone enlightenment, is when desires no longer rise. The definition of enlightenment as it is, or definition of this realization, is as self-evident realization or rising of the innate sense of fullness.
Okay.
So if we are to talk about this, then I can tell you, then there is nothing that I am, nothing that on the outside or even on the inside that needs to be brought to a greater fullness, because that fullness is a lived experience. This is why I had that, in my conversation with someone who's quite intelligent, well-read, who was at some point placed in the position of being a student, who was also suffered from chronic depression practically all his life, but was relieved from that almost in a, I don't know, second, maybe third live event, maybe sooner. But
a younger man, right?
Yes, a younger man, much younger man. So when he asked me, like, and what rolled out of me kind of as a spontaneous response was that I can never be depressed, you see? And it's a kind of like a bizarre thing to say. How can you say, how can you be sure? Wait until life knocks you with something, right? A dangerous thing to assume.
Yeah.
And yet, with full awareness of what this represents, I'm telling you that one thing I know is that I'm truly happy. You see? So therefore, there's this is fundamentally more important than how reactive or non-reactive I am on my daily or day-to-day situations.
Beautiful. I understand. Mm-hmm.
So in other words, it's like whatever happens, it's not happens because of the hankering for something. It's already, as it were, fulfilled. Whatever action is done, it's already fulfilled. And yet, if you were to see how I do my work, it's like I drive people crazy. I drive people crazy with the way it has to be brought. So it's like if you showed up, well, I'm sorry, you showed up. You have to deliver. So it's almost a contradiction. And we're supposed to relax, everything is fine, everything as it is. Yes, at the end of the day is.
Yeah.
And at the end of full exhalation it is. Yeah. But, in for a pound, in for a penny, in for a pound. If you showed up, you need to really, really go the full, the whole mile, not just, and to me this is a crucial difference in terms of maybe also how the attitude in terms of what and how it can translate in beingness, translates into this. Oh, that guy, that self-realized guy, that girl is completely quiet, sitting. He doesn't want anything. He doesn't want students. He doesn't want nothing. He's just really chilled out. I know that person. He's like he's so finicky. He's he's like really like, my God, like, what's going on? You see? To me, when I work with people, with students, I demand almost from them to be accountable for everything they do, because to me this is paramount to what this is about.
Yeah.
See, so it's like it's simultaneously held here. And if it doesn't work, instantaneously everyone is reassured that it's perfect. Every failure, every collapse of anything that we wanted to rise, carry, defend, protect, it did not work. Well, that is what it is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So just that one, maybe that last question about the happiness. So, as you know, emotions are felt only when they come and go. So we're talking about something which sounds like an emotional state, but is steady. How do you? It's a very unusual kind of happiness. Then, can you describe what it is, how it's experienced or not experienced, witnessed or recognized?
Okay, this may no longer be surprising to you, but I will want to give you two perspectives here. One is how it experienced, and one is somatic also, how it is also experienced. So one, how it is experienced in terms of, let's say that emotional, psychic resonance, right? And another one is more in terms of that energetic resonance, in terms of that pranic, electric, right? That energetic resonance. So when I give myself to action, right? Literally, you get out of bed and you act, right? And you are active in a way. For instance, right now, it's like there are bare moments left for myself, right? So those moments are cherished as a just for that what I love more than anything. And for many people, I'm very explicit, dynamic, very kind of passionate, but that is a superficial veneer which those who know me more, they know I'm not love nothing more than prolonged phases of just sitting doing nothing, completely just being, doing nothing, hammock, lovely comfortable chair, sitting, enjoying just that, whatever that is, or having tea, or maybe if there's something piques my fancy. I only read, unfortunately, now when I need to read. I no longer have that kind of So these phases of contemplation are now much more luxurious in the way the life is in that phase right now. So this, when I'm in action, when I'm in activity, it is so full and total and complete that there is nothing other than that action is. There's nothing that I can say that, oh, I cannot do it because my mind is burdened by something. You see? If suddenly I'm with a little baby now, and she's now crawling and walking everywhere. Not walking, crawling. It's like sudden new stage. And my wife is hands-on most of the time, but if it's my phase, my turn, then I'm there completely. Also in the kind of like household division, we right now don't have the luxury to have a housekeeper. It's just once a week, it's not enough so we have to tend to ourselves. So she's a brilliant cook and she cooks, but the kitchen duty is on me. Whatever kids can do is still everyone is rested. I have to do my kitchen duty, and I love that. I should keep it just between us. So, don't give it away. But then, soon as there's moments of repose, you see, where is I lay down or sit down, there is this immediately that somatic experience takes over. Very often it energetically feels, because my body is constantly in a state of vibration. When I'm active, I don't feel it that much. But soon as I repose, it is more evident when I lay down. When I lay down at the end of the day, when I lay down for the body to rest, then there is this a greater degree of vibration. Yeah. But it is also experienced as soon as I sit down. So any moment of repose, there is this somatic wave, somatic resonance. And on psyche emotional level, there is this falling into that a deep background, that colorless flavor, that what through which everything is perceived. But again, I don't want to now give this intellectual thing because I wanted to speak about it like children do. So it's like simply falling into that myself, you see, that myself, which has this degrees of that bubbling something. And that bubbling is always pleasant. It may be sometimes very subtle, gentle, just fizzing itself with some of that Just like tamed sweetness. At other times, it may be more acute, you see, acute. I used to have more intense phases of almost overbearing experiences of that bliss. Interestingly enough, it is actually a relief not to have that, because sometimes it will incapacitate me.
Yes.
Make me redundant in many ways. But soon as it's like okay, allow me for a poetic metaphor. If I'm on a battlefield and I cut head off and I don't even blink, but soon as I get off my horse, I'm the sweetest guy in town. Just drink sake and just relaxing. So it's like that.
Yes.
I don't know. It sometimes puzzled me myself also. Like even throughout this, that concerns which I should have, right? But sometimes make my wife worry, and like this, that. But when I'm alone, I don't have these concerns. You see, I can make a pensive face. I can say we should be more prudish, or we should be like smart, this and that. Okay, let's create new strategy. I'm a CEO. I go into the office. We have a meeting. It's like.
Yeah.
But when off the horse, why half and puff, right?
Yes.
You take down all this, just put it down. So that's how I would describe it.
Yes. No. It's a very I don't know, very special way of describing it, and it's a very interesting way of explaining what this happiness is. I mean, I still feel, because you mentioned a few qualities of that vibration. You said it's like bubbling. You said about sweetness. There's still something in my vocabulary is missing to make it into happy. The word happy means something on a something more is needed for it to be related to the word happy, don't you think?
Okay, maybe this is, you see that there is happiness that is maybe ascribed or somehow commonly understood as that human happiness. That human happiness, whatever that represents.
Yeah.
And I have that in abundance. Like literally, it's there. I sometimes, when wife and I speak casually about this, sometimes it's like it's so easy to be envious of the way we live, because our life is a kind of unusual life. It's very usual, normal for us, but it's unusual from the outside.
Yes.
It's completely free of concerns, seems to be. It's free flowing. We seem to move geographically. We seem to decide where we want to be. We have amazingly beautiful touchwood children, right? Like we have this, like suddenly, like having a baby at the age of 54. So, and we love each other as well, So it's not like just kind of like holding a face there.
Yes.
There is this. There's so much beauty in our life, so much beauty. So that happiness is there. It's almost, it's like when you wanted something for a long time. Let's say you wanted something, I don't know, you wanted whatever. What can it be? If you're a collector, from that class of relatables, I know maybe you wanted that watch, maybe you wanted that car, maybe you wanted that dog, maybe you wanted that something, and you suddenly get it. There is this sense of satisfaction, right? At least for a few days, come on.
Yes.
You know, vibrating or lingering, right? If you're a carpet lover, rugs lover, you know, I love fabrics, then you like, you'll definitely enjoy that. Oh, that's an unusual kilim, right? Antique, beautiful. Like whatever that gives you joy will be experienced still there. But that's not what I'm talking about. So therefore, I wanted to speak about the somatic experience, which dissolves all this, and it's energetic in quality. It's more like intravenous experience. So it has this a quality which it has sweetness and stillness, and yet it's dynamic as well. It's vibrant. And the degrees of that, as I said, sometimes it's overwhelming. You know, in the past, I used to pray it not take place when I travel, when I have to be at the airport. You know, like literally, I have to concentrate, I have to do things, and yet I am like almost dissolving in that firmament, you know, or like I'm energetically losing the boundaries, you know, and it's extremely pleasurable. So it's not like I'm like I need some painkiller, you know. It's a
Yes.
So it's like are you on drugs? Oh yeah, you know, I'm really high. So, but I don't know what's more preferable. Yeah, maybe one day, you know, if it's not going to reoccur so often, one would begin to miss that. I don't know. You know, right now I don't have time to miss anything. It's like that fullness comes through my ears. I don't have time, you see. I don't have time to be awake. I don't have time to sleep. So it's like that at the level of the activity of what, you know. So, and that quality that you're asking, that happiness. So it's not the happiness that kind of maybe commonly, as I try to articulate that again, commonly understood as what that happiness would represent. You see? And I also am fully aware of the fragility of, you know, because I lived this, experience that, I know what it is like. I know the fragility of how things are, how everything, 1 minute is here, next minute is gone.
Yeah.
So again, when I ask myself, if there is this wave comes up, then you know, it's what can be said about it? Really, what can be said about it? So